With the September update coming up pretty soon, we'll start getting devlogs pretty soon to see if the leak lists that have been made are correct. Before that though, I want to make a video on what vehicles I think each nation needs currently within the next couple of updates for War Thunder. With that being said, there'll be many opinions within this video, so definitely make sure to leave a comment if you think a vehicle would be particularly better in another tech tree, or if you think my suggestions are just wrong, because this is all just an opinion piece of what I think should come to War Thunder for all of the tech tree. So for the first nation here, we have America, and as we all know, America's doing pretty well. Their air tree is honestly doing really good. The ground tree is doing okay, but at the same time, they do have a major gap whenever it comes to their SPA lineup of where they just don't have a vehicle between the Dusters and the M163. Really, the problem with America is that their lineups are very limited whenever it comes to actually introducing some sort of SPA, and there's a couple of them that you could add. You could add the T-77 with the Chaffee turret with the 50 cals on it, but at the same time, does that really fix the gap between the 4.3 to 7.7? I'd probably say no, but the most logical choice would be to add the M114 with the 20mm cannon on it. This would be very similar to vehicles we have already in other nations, and this would also give America a high velocity SPA, which would put them online with all of the other nations within War Thunder. Now we're on to Germany, and as you know with Germany, they are sitting in a weird position whenever it comes to the air tree, because their air tree is probably one of the poorest within the game right now, being that you have the MiG-29 and also the F4F Ice, which are vehicles that are very much superseded by other nations whenever it comes to War Thunder. Germany itself really doesn't have anything else that they can really add to the tech tree until the Eurofighter Typhoon, which I don't expect to be here very soon, but at the same time, I feel like it would be a great situation to actually introduce the Swiss F-18C, which would give Germany something special for at least like 1 or 2 updates, which means that they would have an actual top tier vehicle that can be a little bit combat effective. Now, the only problem with this sort of thing is, once again, you're pissing off the Americans, because if you add a vehicle that is American but don't add it within their tech tree, for some reason they always want to get mad. Go ask Italy whenever it came to the Harrier. To me at least, it's just a stupid thing. American mains that watching this video right now, just realize this: you're going to have the best air tree within War Thunder. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're the best air tree within War Thunder whenever it comes to your top tier air. Like, you're just going to have so much better stuff compared to everybody else. I think it's completely fine to at least have other nations have a little bit of a fun time whenever it comes to their air trees and have a little bit something special for at least like 1 or 2 updates, because every single update you're going to get a new jet, you're going to get your F-18s, you're going to get your F-22 Raptors, you're going to get your F-35s, you're going to get everything under the book, your Strike Eagles, you're going to get everything. Just let other nations have a little bit of a time, a little bit of a chat. That should do something and be a little bit entertaining. That's the only thing I really have to say about that. At the same time, I feel like the Swiss F-18 is going to be one of the best options that Gaijin can introduce to the German tech tree, and it actually give them a little bit something competitive at top tier. Now we're on to Russia, and quite honest with you, once again, Russia is still in a really good position. I don't really think there's anything particularly poor about the tech tree itself, but we do have some vehicles which are kind of lacking from within the tech tree, which I think would benefit Russia a ton, and mainly that's around the IFV type vehicles and also the autocannon vehicles, because that's really the only thing that Russia kind of lacks in. Yes, you do have like the BMP-3 and the BMP-2, but they're kind of low tiers whenever it comes to War Thunder. I believe like the highest one is like 9.3, and whenever it comes to War Thunder, you have vehicles right now that are sitting at 10.3, like the Namer 30 for Israel. So I feel like it'd be pretty cool to have just a tech tree vehicle. I know you do have the BMP-2M, which would give them the same ability, but it's a squadron vehicle. But I feel like it'd be very cool to just have a tech tree vehicle, which is actually an autocannon type vehicle. Maybe it could be the Terminator whenever it comes to the Russians, or maybe it could be one of their new IFVs that they're actually prototyping, actually developing, which is the Kurganets 25. So maybe that would be a interesting one that can add. That's really the only thing that Russia is really missing, is that they're adding some sort of light tank with like an IFV type cannon on it. Maybe we could have the BMD-4M. That would be a pretty interesting as one as well to add within the tech tree, but it's very much better than having just a copy paste T-72, T-80 type tank. And to be honest with you, I would love to just have another light tank that I'm able to play, because vehicles like the BMD, the BMP even, are just very fun to play with their autocannon, and it would just be very cool to have another one to play within the Russian tech tree. For the UK, they really don't need anything, so we can just skip them. I'm just kidding. The UK right now is probably one of the nations that needs a lot of help whenever it comes to the ground tree, just because I would say now with Italy having Hungary as a sub-tree, the UK might be one of the worst ground trees within the game whenever it comes to top tier. Like, I still think the UK tech tree is pretty good, but at the same time for the UK, while the Challenger 3 is still pretty good whenever it comes to top tier, I would just say this not as good as other vehicles within War Thunder. Even though it has a really good punchy gun, you still have issues with the breach, you still have issues with mobility, especially since the engine nerf that came to the Challenger 3. I feel like UK just needs something to spice up their lineups, because they've ran for a very long time with just Challengers, which are the slowest MBT whenever it comes to top tier, and getting into new positions like an Abrams can is pretty much impossible to the Challenger 2s. They kind of have to stay back and hill peak, which for a lot of times isn't the meta play plays within top tiers, kind of getting close and trying to get into the enemy itself. So overall, I feel like the best thing that the UK could probably get for them is actually get a new sub-tree, but for India. And they would actually get the Arjun tanks, which would make them a little bit more competitive. I mean, it's not the best tank in the world, as we all know, but at the same time, it would give them a little bit more mobility, and then they would also get just a slight bit more whenever it comes to their actual playstyle, because you would actually have two types of tanks. You could have your Challenger 2s, which would give you a little bit of hold down playstyle more defensively, and then you could get your Arjuns, which would be able to kind of just rush in and do the same things that the Leopards and the Abrams and all the other tanks are able to do whenever it comes to War Thunder. So that's what I'd love to see. Maybe we get that in the future of War Thunder, but it would be crazy for them not to just give the Indian sub-tree whenever it comes to ground forces for the UK tech tree. So the next nation is Japan, and I think Japan is a very interesting one because Japan is one of the very first tech trees with War Thunder that I would say is completed. Like, there really isn't much left that you can add to this tech tree, which will be original, which will be able to do anything that would make you want to play it. So I feel like the best way to actually do this tech tree now is to make it into a sub-tree, and Thailand is one of the best sub-trees that they can currently get whenever it comes to War Thunder. As we know, with the last couple of updates, they got the F5E FCU as a squadron vehicle, and that vehicle, to me at least, is a test vehicle. And what I mean by a test vehicle is just to see how many people are interested in a vehicle like that. Now, the vehicle itself is actually pretty good, so that's also a factor of why people are playing that vehicle whenever it comes to squadron vehicle. But I think it's like time to actually test the waters with a ground vehicle whenever it comes to Thailand. And for me at least, I think that ground vehicle would be the M41 Stingray as a premium for Japan. And to be quite honest with you, it's a very good premium because the M41 Stingray, if you don't know what it is, it's the Stingray that's normally on the M551 chassis or the Sheridan chassis, but on a M41 Walker Bulldog chassis. So it's going to be a little bit different, but it also still allows the regular Stingray to come within the Japanese tech tree as a sub-tech tree whenever it comes to Thailand. So honestly, I think this is like the best thing that could happen for Japan. It tests the waters to just see if people are actually interested in this sort of thing, because you got to admit it, if people aren't interested in it, then it's not really worth doing as a sub-tree for Japan. And then also, Thailand really doesn't have much whenever it comes to their actual sub-tree that they could offer to Japan. It would be just more vehicles that actually bolster lineups, rather than it be like for Hungary, which actually give them more an advantage whenever it comes to War Thunder. So honestly, that would be my hope for the Japanese tech tree, is that we don't just see like a clone of like Type 16 or a Type 90 again, and we start seeing more vehicles that are just unique and different compared to what we normally see for Japan. So now we're on to China, and China on the other hand is just like Russia, where the tech tree itself is pretty much alright. I wouldn't really say that they have any gaps that needs to be filled right now, but what I think China is missing right now is that they're missing a sub-tree, and giving them a sub-tree would just brighten up the tech tree a little bit, or maybe more people actually play the tech tree whenever it comes to War Thunder. The options that they have are pretty limited whenever it comes to a sub-tree, but I think the most likely choice for them to have a Chinese sub-tree is to be North Korea. And yes, I know there's some problems with North Korea being added as the sub-tree, mainly around the information about the vehicles being very, very limited. But also, you have to remember this, that North Korea is a pretty much island nation whenever it comes to just everything. They're not playing War Thunder. They're not playing the game that me and you play right now, right? They're stuck on an island doing whatever the North Koreans do. This also means that, like, you can't market towards someone's nationality to make it to where they'd actually want to play these vehicles. It would always be people who are not from North Korea playing these vehicles, and to be quite honest with you, I don't really think that the interest is there a lot of the time whenever it comes to these North Korean vehicles. I think for most people, Americans would probably just meme on it whenever it comes to playing these vehicles. I don't think many people actually think these vehicles are like unique or interesting, which can be a little bit of a problem for a sub-tree being added into the game. But for me at least, I feel like this is like a multi-vehicle like the suggestion. I feel like the sub-tree for North Korea would be pretty cool. We already do have a couple of vehicles within the game itself. For Russia, for example, if you go look at the MiG-15 Best and the MiG-15, the first camo, do you believe that you get is a North Korean one, and then also the Chinese actually have a premium whenever it comes to their air tree already, which is the Shenyang F5, which is North Korean. So most likely, if North Korea ever came, it would go to China anyways, but at the same time, it'd be really cool to just see a sub-tree. The only question really is, are people interested in this sort of thing? And that's going to be very, very hard to tell, because you can't really ask people who don't play the game, and then it would be mainly marketed towards like the broader audience of the whole entire world, which most people I don't really think care about North Korea that deeply. Now we're down to Italy, and to be honest with Italy, you've seen one of the biggest improvements in the game whenever it comes to their tech tree. Hungary has given Italy a new lease of life whenever it comes to giving them leopards, and also the air tech tree is probably one of the most variety-given tech trees within War Thunder, which means that if you want to play an F-16, you can go to Italy. If you want to play a MiG-29, you can go to Italy. Even if you want to play a Harrier, you can go to Italy or Griffin. The texture itself is just doing really good whenever it comes to the variety, and then also just the improvements Hungary has given them has been really good. The only problem that Italy has right now is that they just don't have an SPA for their top tier lineups. They have the automatic, which in itself is still a decently good SPA. At the same time, it can't reach out and actually attack helicopters that are very far away, nor can it attack someone who's in space who is going to be dropping GPUs on you or using Maverick. So it's not the best in the world, which means that it does need to be improved. And there's still one minor nation that is in the Italian texture that people do forget about, which is Romania. And Romania does have a really good SPA, which is the 9K33 OSA, which does have about the same missiles as the Taurian 1 from the Chinese texture. So it wouldn't be that big of a change whenever it comes to the actual SPAs with the War Thunder, but at the same time, it would give Italy something to at least attack air targets with, and Romania will be added to their ground tree, which I think is pretty much a positive thing. So yeah, that's what I would add for Italy. Now let's get on to France, which I think is going to be one of the most boring ones because we already kind of know what's coming for them. So for France, we kind of know what's probably coming to them as of right now because, well, for one, they got a subtree last update, which was the Benelux for the air forces, and it would be pretty much a given that they're going to be getting a Benelux ground tree whenever it comes to France. And honestly, to me at least, I feel like that's the most positive thing that can happen to France because it gives them more vehicles, it bolsters their lineups whenever it comes to ground forces, and then overall it just gives them better vehicles when it comes to everything. Like they get some Leopards, they get a cool Leopard prototype thing that is going to be able to do wonderful things. I feel like the Benelux tech tree for the French is just going to be overall very positive for them. So now we're on to Sweden, and to be quite honest with you, Sweden has a bit of a problem, and a question that I really want to ask you right now, which you may have a yes or no answer to, is why would you want to actually grind out their tech tree whenever it comes to War Thunder at this point? Yes, they do have the Griffin C, they do have a very good air tree whenever it comes to the low and mid tiers, but at the same time, if you compare their air tree to pretty much every other nation within War Thunder, why would you ever play them? America's just better than them. If you go to Britain, you have a bunch of other vehicles that you can play with them, and you also have a Griffin. If you do Italy, especially Italy right now, Italy has a variety of different vehicles that you can play, which you would still get the same experience as playing the Griffin C. So if your whole point is to play the Griffin, or just have like top tier Sweden, there's really no point of playing them as of right now whenever it comes to War Thunder, which I think is a really bad thing. At the same time, the Griffin's still a pretty good vehicle. The only thing about it is that it's in other tech trees now, which kind of makes it a little bit irrelevant to actually grind out, which is just kind of sad to me at least. So I feel like Sweden has the same problem that Germany has, of where they're not really ever going to get anything good until they add more vehicles within the game, right? Or get to the point, right? So I feel like the best thing that they can actually do whenever it comes to their tech tree is just introduce the Finnish F-18C. Just like with the Swiss F-15C, this vehicle would be introduced into Sweden, which would give them a little bit of an edge whenever it comes to their tech tree, and honestly just give them something like a fresh breath of life of they actually have a vehicle that many other tech trees don't have. And that would just, to me at least, make it where people would actually want to grind the tech tree a little bit more. But yeah, overall, Sweden right now is just kind of in a really poor state whenever it comes to the air tree, not because they're bad, it's just because they're kind of irrelevant compared to other nations within War Thunder. So finally, we're down to Israel, and to be quite honest with you, Israel has still been in a very poor position whenever it comes to the ground tech tree. While yes, Gaijin has been added more vehicles, the ground tech tree seems to get more and more lacking whenever it comes to their actual lineup. For example, right now you have the Merkava Mark IID, which is a premium that they took away from the store. It's the only 9.7 within a tech tree. You also have the Chaffariel and the Neighbor 30, which is a 10.3 vehicle, but other than those two 10.3s, you don't have anything else until you hit 11.0. While Israel does have some really good battle ratings whenever it comes to their tech tree, like the 7.7s, the 8.0s, and even maybe a little bit the 9.3, just depending on if you get a good BR for them, the rest of the tree really does have some problems with actually giving vehicles out that actually support lineup. So if I was actually going to like there's a ton of vehicles that Israel kind of just needs added to the game, but if I was going to actually have to introduce like a vehicle to just one of them, for example, it'd probably be the Saber tank. Like I know they're like export models, right? But at the same time, I feel like it could actually bolster a 10.3 lineup, and I feel like 10.3 should always be like a stepping stone between, like I would say, the mid tiers of War Thunder to top tier. So if they're able to introduce a 10.3, at least give them one MBT whenever it comes to that lineup. You get a lineup for the Namer, you said Chaffariel, and then also you get a MBT. I think those three vehicles would be enough to actually have a decently good lineup for that battle rating bracket. So yeah, that's what I would introduce for Israel. The whole tech tree just needs like help. And Gaijin, please, instead of adding vehicles which are just going to like introduce more gaps in lineups, get vehicles which are actually going to improve lineup, and that would just make the tech tree a ton better. So there we go. There's my hopes for the next major update within War Thunder. I know most of these vehicles probably won't come, but at the same time, I feel like these would be the best options for the game. If you have gotten this far in the video, make sure to like and sub to the channel. It is very much appreciated. And also in the comments what vehicles that you'd like to see come to War Thunder. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys in the next War Thunder video.